if I'm emceeing in a night to give a cool little hamster sound like this if I just want to switch it up.
What's up? Today, I'm going to cut through the BS and I'm going to give you guys the effects you should be using when you're DJing on USBs. Now, any sort of like XDJ, CDJs, all that stuff, they have a ton of different effects on them, and you'll see it on like the other camera view here. It's just like ridiculous how many effects are on there. I mean, they all can be used, I guess, but I'll show you guys what each one does on this XDJ model here, and kind of the ones for people who are DJing for long periods of time are going to actually be using. There's some that are fancy, but you don't need it. Okay, so on this mixer here, we have delay, echo, ping pong, spiral, reverb, trans, filter, flanger, phaser, pitch, slip roll, roll, vinyl break, and helix. Another thing that is noteworthy here is using the beat effects here. You can change the speed of your effect. So it could be 4 all the way down to 1/16. This number just glides through the selection here, but usually I just use the touchpad just to pick whatever effect I want to use. And then I also usually will quantize my effects as well, just to make sure it's right on grid the whole time. And then right below the quantize section here, we also have the frequencies that you can select. So if you kind of want it to be like high, mid, if you only want the low frequencies to be selected, that's just what you would leave on. Typically, since I'm doing a lot of EQ, I don't really touch this, but sometimes people will just take the low end out altogether on these effects, but I kind of just leave it untouched for the most part. Okay, so the first effect, delay. My kind of peeve with this one is it's not really like a post fader effect. And what I mean by that is when I activate the effect and hit the volume down right here, what you're gonna see is it only loops it like once and that's it. And maybe I'm doing something wrong here, but from my experience, it's not really like a good effect. So see how it only like kind of like loops it once? Like I said, I don't know if I'm doing something wrong here or not, but I don't really use delay. The one that I am using a lot of time is echo. Echo has been a lot better for me. It is a post fader effect from my experience, like I said, and it has like a long tail to it and a really clean sound. So the echo effect kind of sounds like this. Much more clean, longer tail, which is much more beneficial. So I'm not using delay, I'm using echo a lot of the time when I'm DJing. And then I usually use it at 1 or a half beat. That's usually what I'm going to use when I'm DJing. Some people like to be fancy and use little 3/4. Ping pong, I'm only using this effect if it's like a really quick effect, like if I'm doing like 1/8 or like maybe a quarter, something like that. That's the only time I'm really using ping pong. It has a cool like left to right effect on it, but it doesn't have like the best tail. It's a cool, just like fast effect how I do it. That's just my personal preference, but you can do it a little bit longer if you want. Spiral. It's kind of weird. It's like a delay, but it's also like kind of filtering some of the frequencies out. I don't really use this effect. I'm not a fan of it personally. Some people obviously are going to use it a lot, but I don't. It's not really. Like it'll like pitch it up too, like when you go into like the half, quarter, eighth, 16, stuff like that. So I just stay away from spiral. I wouldn't touch it. I'd usually, for now, I just stick with echo and ping pong. Reverb, obviously I'm using. I never really put reverb past 50%. So usually I'll pair this with like a high pass filter, something of that nature. And then that usually leads to a good transition. Trans has an interesting sound to it. It just chops up the effect. There's no point. Like, what's the point of doing that when you can just... It doesn't make sense. And then that will free you up to use other effects while you're doing that with the fader. So filter, you can use the filter if you want, but when we went over sound color effects last week, you have more options and more control with your sound color effect filter, in my opinion. So I don't see a reason for you to use these like frequency effects to use this filter effect. I think you should, if you're using a filter, you should just stick to the sound color effects and use the color effects knobs for your filter. The filter, it just... It opens and closes like on the effect. It doesn't make sense. I don't know why you would use this. It just opens and closes. Like you can do that yourself with the sound color effects. So I would stay away from that filter, but if you are going to use a filter, use the sound color effects filter. It sounds better. Flanger. Flanger I use a decent bit. I would say I use it like once or twice in a night. It sounds really good. Like if it's on like a build, like if you're really doing like some EDM stuff and you're on a build and it's just building, you can use that. It kind of will cut some of the low end, add a little bit of interesting like movement to the sound. So I think it's a really good effect. It's good to like just play around with, like how sometimes like I'll play around with dub echo a little bit, like just throw a splash of it in there. You can throw a splash of flanger in there too. It sounds really good depending on what you're doing. Phaser, basically the same thing in terms of usage as flanger. It's just something you can kind of play around with. Good for dance music, especially on like builds, things of that nature, and on breakdowns. It's just a different kind of style of sound, and it's has its own unique tone to it. Ah, yes, the pitch effect. Let me show you the only thing the pitch effect would be good for. Actually, no. It's more of like a funny thing.
Like if you're trying to be funny with your voice, it's a cool thing you can do.
So on the mixer here, you can see I have a mic 1, and then I also have a mic 2. So I'm on mic 1, and if I use the pitch effect and I'm in like, let's say 26%,
I can use the pitch effect while I'm talking. Or if I'm emceeing in a night, to give a cool little hamster sound like this, if I just want to switch it up. And if I bring it down into the negative,
I can start to edit my voice like this, give it more of a Barry White sound, if you would say.
I don't know, it sounds pretty creepy on the low end, but the high end's pretty funny if you're trying to be funny with your voice and stuff like that and add different things to what you're doing. When you're actually DJing and you're using it on like an actual like fader, it sounds pretty bad. So the only time I would use it is if you're just trying to be funny with your voice. Lean more on the pitch up side of things. Slip roll, I'm not really using rolls, to be honest, because you have like beat loop and other different pad effects that you can use. I don't really see the point in the slip roll or the roll effect. You can kind of move effects to different channels though. That's just another sort of like intermediate thing that I've seen other DJs do. I'm not going to go over that today because, to be quite frank, there isn't an instance where you're going to need to do that when you're DJing. So slip roll and roll, there's really no point for them. Actually, these last four, to be honest, I don't want to be like harsh and make it sound like these effects are like terrible or anything like that. They are good effects and they're cool and they do different things. But to be honest, the only effects you're really going to be using are echo, ping pong, reverb, flanger, phaser, and pitch, maybe every once in a while. Roll and slip roll, you can achieve that on the beat loop pad section on the mixer. There's really no need for you to dip into your effects and use this effect slot when you can just get it done on the pads. Vinyl break is another effect too, where if you just set your vinyl speed adjust, there's really no need for you to use a vinyl break. Like if you set your vinyl break to 11 o'clock, it just makes a really clean vinyl break sound there. So there's no need for the vinyl break effect either. Helix is only kind of sounding good when it's on the really like fast end, like 1/16. It's cool to add just like a little bit of that in there, but it's not really like a post fader effect either. So like I'm saying, if you're gonna do it, maybe pair it with a dub echo or something like that, but I don't really use Helix either. Now, I'm not like bashing Record Box or anything like that. I actually think a lot of these effects are really quality, especially the sound color effects, which I went over in the last video. I think those are top notch, if not some of the best right now in terms of just like general effects that people can use. But if you pair these frequency effects with your sound color effects, you can get a lot of really cool results and a cool like little like hybrid sound that you can't get with other mixers out there on the market and other softwares. But that does it for me today. Hopefully you guys learned something new, maybe have like a short list of effects and things like that that you want to stick to, because that's what I have. And let me know if there's anything I missed or kind of got wrong in the video. Like I said, the delay stuff, I don't really think that's post fader, but let me know if I'm wrong. And be on the lookout for the next episode where I go over a different part of this mixer, because we're going to explain every little kind of like nook and cranny, what you need and what you don't need. Until the next video, take it easy, and I'll talk to you soon.